Development Coordinator for St. John Ambulance in Saskatchewan. And we have two representatives from a university-based program here in the Paul J. Hill School of Business. They're executives in this group, which is called Enactus, and I presume they'll tell us a little bit about that as part of their comments. We have Jonathan Lipoth. I apologize if I screwed up your name. And we have Abbas Syed. I apologize if I screwed up your name. But I think we'll take the group in the order that we have. I will be aggressively timing them and making fun of them if they go way too long. But mostly we look forward to hearing what they have to say as they reflect on how universities contribute to community success and what it is that helps this work. So let's start with Dr. Harrison. Yvonne?
Right. Can you hear me?
Yeah, pull it up closer.
Yeah, okay. Thank you. I think the discussion today has illuminated the fact that there are many challenges or changes in the environment, either social, political, economic, technological, that all affect not-for-profit organizations and these huge needs. And how does a university actually assist with that? And in fact, I think it's about leveraging not the knowledge, but the capabilities of a university around as methodologists to assist the community in identifying what those challenges are. And working with the sector to conduct the research to address them. And I'm just going to give you some that's no stranger to nonprofits here that have been illuminated or surfaced as many studies that are challenges facing the sector around funding and resource development, around workforce development, even collaboration as grants and funding agencies require not-for-profits to work together in order to apply for funding. And how do they do that? Around not only getting the funding, but keeping the funding, so performance measurement and management challenges, new business models, as David alluded to, social enterprises are now part of the not-for-profit sector, and like anything else, they affect how not-for-profits who are charitable and other kinds actually run their businesses, so to speak. Boards and governance with changes in the environment and increasing numbers of boards who are failing to provide adequate oversight of their organizations. I think Oxfam is the latest example of a governance failure, and regulators calling on greater involvement of boards. And so universities really could be an important source of not only conducting and raising the challenges, but helping those organizations address them. But ultimately with the goal that the community or the organization or the group, whether it's the board, has to own those challenges and has to have the capacity to respond to them, that the university is there to assist in that way. The other point is to recognize that we aren't the only game in town and that there are multiple stakeholders in this environment. It's a multi-sectoral arena, and we have to acknowledge the role of governments and other not-for-profit organizations. Within higher education, there are institutes and there are departments, and there's just a web of resources that we need to connect with. And then, of course, we can't forget the community foundations and the local capacity builders like United Ways and others that we must connect with and try to pool the resources that can provide the technical assistance. I want to highlight the technical assistance part of change because I think the community is very well and able to adapt, but there's things that we can interject that we have on a technical side of things that research has shown has made a difference. So thinking about change beyond adoption, but technical capacity and adaptive capacity to address some of these problems, and then ultimately measuring that impact. What role could VSSN or other kinds of organizations like us play? Education and professional development. We know that there's going to be there's a turnover of staff. We need to prepare the next generation of leaders. We need to educate leaders for increasing roles in leadership in their organizations as the baby boom retires. We can be a convener and a collaborator, and we can help advocate with you around legislative advocacy, administrative advocacy. We have an organization full of students who are so engaged and want to, and we're going to hear from a couple who are going to inspire you. I think technical and research assistance, outreach and consulting, as David's center provides, are all other ways that we can contribute. But I think also, more importantly, perhaps most importantly, is public perception of the not-for-profit sector, and what are ways that we can do to share knowledge, disseminate the real impact economically, socially of this sector collectively on our communities.
Excellent. You didn't have to stop right that second, but it's appreciated. So, thank you very much. So let's hear from Sara. Please pull the mic closer.
A little closer? All right. I'll really get in there. So yeah, I'm Sara Hanna. My title is Engaged Learning Coordinator at Campion College, another federated college of the University of Regina. Engaged Learning is a community service learning program. I'm sure there are many, many people in this room who are involved in community service learning, either as faculty or, quite importantly, as our community partners. So for those of you who don't know, community service learning is a way of offering students an opportunity to do service in their community, reflect on that experience, and write about it in light of the courses that they're taking. And this is something that you heard our president speaking proudly about this morning, and we do love to brag about our community service learning. And I think it's very important for us as an institution to recognize that it's not just our faculty who are making this happen, but it's also community partners who are making this happen. And I wanted to express with so many not-for-profit organizations in the room how appreciative we are that you are adding to the learning experience of our students in such a meaningful way. At Campion specifically, we are Canada's only Jesuit undergraduate institution of higher learning. So we're a Jesuit college which has a certain spiritual heritage to it, and one of the key images in this in the spiritual life of Jesuits is contemplation in action. So I think this is something that is really expressed in how we do service learning. It's what we hope our students will experience, that they will be active and engaged in their communities, but also that they are thinking deeply and, in an ideal world, learning something. Some things that I see as, and I wanted to add to that actually, in light of some things that were said in the last panel discussion, that I see this as really heart and spirit work for our students. That oftentimes they are dealing with and experiencing dynamics of power and privilege that they haven't encountered before, or just communities that they haven't encountered before, or are not accustomed to spending a lot of time with. And I really see a great need and desire to engage with that at that level, not just academically. I think that's something that institutionally we could do a lot more to support. I know a lot of people doing community service learning are faculty members kind of doing it on their own, and that's a lot to put on a faculty member who is also doing things like creating community partnerships and facilitating student learning. Something I see as a big area for growth at the U of R is especially in the area of service learning, is collaboration. Like I said, there's a lot of people and groups at the University of Regina who are engaged in service learning or related work. And I would love to see us working together more and finding more common ground. And something that I see as a great strength of the student population at the U of R is I get so frustrated when I hear people talking about disengagement among the youth, because I see in my day-to-day experience a lot of young students who are really eager to and excited to get involved, and it really is an amazing thing that I wish everybody could get to experience. But often they either don't know what's out there in terms of what's available to them as an opportunity, what would work for them perfectly, that they're searching for something specific and they don't know that it exists. And or what they do know about doesn't really fit them well, or the things that we're already offering don't fit them well. So I think a great thing that we can do at the U of R is matchmaking, helping students to make those connections. And I want to say something that really struck me from your talk, David, was the idea of small wins. I really see small wins as my game, and I think it's really great to celebrate, the individual student who found a nonprofit partner that they wanted to stay with and that they built a real, genuine relationship with. And I think we can really celebrate those little moments with our students and for our institutions as well.
Thank you very much. Look at that. Wait, everybody's finishing up faster. So, yeah, find whichever one is most easily accessible to you, but do talk closely to it.
Thank you very much. So yes, my name is Kelly Husack, and thank you so much for having me here today. It's a great privilege and honor, and I'm happy to be able to talk about this buzzword of engagement that we've been talking about so far today. And I don't mean buzzword in a crass or negative way in any ways. It's a really important term that I think is becoming a little bit more seen, as you can see through an event like today. There are people that want to be out there and want to be engaged, and we need to make sure that we're encouraging that and doing it in the most appropriate way possible. And so when we talk about some considerations, I want to talk a little bit more in the question that I'll lead later about the stakeholders in that change making and in engagement and that process. And so I invite you to come and let's dig a little deeper into that later on. I mentioned we all have our reasons for engaging, I think we need to always go back and reflect on what those were. So I have my reasons for why I've come to be involved in the community. And I think it'll be very similar and consistent, and we'll see a lot of reasons that will, or a lot of those same reasons reflecting over and over again. And so we need to make sure that we're drawing on that as we go. But also another consideration that I have is we need to have true intent in what we're doing, and then matching that intent with the capacity and the community need. So within my organization, we work with a lot of students, and the university comes into that and plays it by supporting us both in kind and financially. And those are all really important pieces. And we need to make sure that we're matching that true intent and need, and we need to examine why we're looking at student engagement. Is it to serve the community, or is it more so to benefit the student? And I'm thinking the more I'm digging into this, it is to benefit the student, especially in a context like we've been talking about it today. And that's not a bad thing. That's just fine. And sometimes we need to be making sure that we're bridging that gap, because that's the key component to engagement. If we're not bringing people in to the community in a way that's accessible and relevant to them, we're not going to make any meaningful engagement happen at all. And so the university also has many contributions that they make, and students are a major source of energy, and that's what we like to draw on in our organization. I was a student who came through the University of Regina and got involved in Search and couldn't leave. It really grabbed me at the right time in the right way. And I hope to be able to do that for other students because it's been able to open up so many doors. Each and every one of us holds many different talents that we can contribute, but the most important things that I think we need to remember is that we need to bring groups together to have that meaningful engagement, and also determining and defining what engagement is in a variety of different contexts, because each and every one of us in all of our different nonprofits and organizations and universities and so on and so forth all have it mean a different thing. But as long as we're making it meaningful and having that correct intent, then I think that's where we need to build from. And to reflect, or not reflect, but to echo a little bit on what many people have said, relationships take time. It's not going to happen without that understanding of relationships and that they evolve and continue to build. But let's remember that there is always that one main goal. And if for that today, I want to propose it to be engagement. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let's give a round of applause. All right, and next we have Sara Gallagher from St. John Ambulance, Saskatchewan.
Yes, thanks for having me. Just to give you a little bit of background with me, I have been working in nonprofit now for the total of 13 years. So I've worked with various nonprofits, including the Canadian Red Cross. I've volunteered with Habitat. I've worked with Ronald McDonald, Canadian Blood Services, and La Fédération des Francophones de Saskatoon, which is the Saskatchewan Francophone Association. Sorry, bad translator. I'm a French, sorry. Anyways, I have to echo what was just said in terms of it grabbed me at a young age. So nurturing that is incredibly important. When it comes to the university, or any university, it's further educating students on the nonprofit world and how it can be attractive. It is an image that needs to be changed. We're going through that right now. Collaboration is a big deal. Yes, relationships, I'm echoing exactly what everyone else has said, but relationships are vital to our survival. I've worked in nonprofits where, we really had to fight for a grant. We didn't get it. That means we didn't get a paycheck for 2 months. So the university, I guess, representatives or ambassadors really need to embed that in the students of how important it is to do community service, to advocate for nonprofit, and the difference that it can make in your community, but also it fills up your cup. I know it sounds corny, but it really, really does impact your life. Creating a space for conversation. So one thing that's interesting that I just want to share is that for the first time in 13 years, just recently this past month, I had someone from the university approach me. That's never happened before, ever. We are having to approach the universities. So having you guys approach us and say, hey, what's possible? What kind of programs or incentives can we give our students? How can we help you? Because honestly, we want to find out how we can help you guys too. So it's just having a very open dialogue regarding that. Also, I love how VSSN has a job board. It's more programs like that. We always need help. We're not in it for the money, as you have echoed. We're not in it for the salary. We're in it for the passion and the love for nonprofit. So we would love for students to get experience and to fall in love with nonprofit, even if it's for a short time, just for a short time. You don't have to be a lifer, like many of us, it sounds like we are, but just to even get into it for a little while. And the other thing is to celebrate our wins. Because we go out to the community, we have to really work at being visible. We would love to have the university congratulate us on our 100th year in Saskatchewan. Little things like that make the biggest difference. And then, yeah, it's just creating a space to educate and discuss possibilities in partnership. And yeah, that's it. Sorry.
Sorry. Thank you very much. Okay. So next we have our two representatives from Enactus, and I trust part of what you'll do is help us understand what Enactus is, but then go beyond that because same questions that everybody's addressed. So you'll be starting off?
Perfect. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
All right. There is a little, in your package, I'll start off, there is a little sheet that you can kind of follow along as I go through our introduction. First of all, I am Jonathan, or you can call me John. I am the Vice President of Communications with Enactus, and I have been for this past academic year. And I love what I do with Enactus, and I think as I kind of get into what Enactus is, I think that's one of the biggest commonalities of Enactus students and of students of the university who take part in Enactus is these students are passionate, and it's reflective in what they do with us. So what Enactus is, it's an international organization, it's a network, speaking again about synergy and creating partnerships of a bunch of different, essentially university communities, Enactus teams who do work in their own communities. This, of course, is we're Enactus Regina. We are based out of the University of Regina, and we are the Regina chapter. Enactus, in general, concerns itself with social entrepreneurship. So essentially building projects, building initiatives in the community that help the community. And the way that it kind of structures that is the university students are empowered and it's very much up to the individual community to go out and develop those projects. And I'll kind of hand this off to my colleague here, Abbas, to answer that question even more.
Yes, thank you. So just to start off by answering question one, how can the university contribute to community success? Well, speaking from a student's point of view, I think it comes down to two main things that we found that Enactus is, well, number one, Enactus is community, a big part of Enactus's contribution to the community is the development of partnerships with community organizations to extend our reach. So that means that by partnering with other organizations, we get access to other resources, we get to make a greater difference, and we get to extend our reach. So just to give you guys an example of a partnership that Enactus has done in the past is with the Regina Food Bank. And with them, we have actually sent out 60 volunteers, and those 60 volunteers have given over 700 hours of their time in 2018 alone. So yeah, that's a pretty big difference that we're making. And the second thing is that one of our organization's largest contribution to the community success is the empowerment of students through entrepreneurship. So that means that Enactus is impact, more often than not, students are underestimated in what they can accomplish as leaders of their community. So Enactus's impact is give students the opportunity to Enactus gives students the opportunity, knowledge, and resources to run projects and create the impact that they are passionate about. We have found that by putting students in a position of leadership, they feel empowered to give to the community. These are students who, after completing their degree, will take the learning experience that they had with Enactus and use it to make a difference in the community. And I can actually speak from personal experience because I've learned a lot of valuable experience from working with projects in Enactus. And I've actually implemented those in some of my own practices that I do outside of the university, and as well as inside, working with different clubs and organizations and initiatives that I've launched. So these are, as I said, the students who get to use these skills to make the difference in the future. And effectively, what our organization does is that we work both to improve our community in the present, as well as empower students to be leaders of change for a lifetime and in the long run. And now I'd like to pass it off to Jonathan to tackle question two.
Yeah, actually, just to kind of wrap it up, I don't know how much time I have left on that. But
You're doing fine, you're good.
just to kind of close kind of on further how the Enactus process works, the Enactus as a whole, as a community, breaks down the kind of the impact that we do into numbers. We find ways to essentially, of course, we seek the opportunity within our community, we take the action, and then we enable progress is kind of the 3 steps within Enactus, and that's the Enactus framework that we implement. It's the kind of the entrepreneurial process as Enactus defines it. And as students, as kind of Abbas touched on, we really are empowered and given the opportunity to kind of step into the position of leadership and the position of a project manager and of an executive. Speaking from my own experience, it really is empowering, and it makes you see how big this not-for-profit sector is and how much opportunity there is to build synergy and build these partnerships and create other works within the community that students I don't think thought they could do before. So that's really a huge part of what we do, is just allowing students to really learn about their own strengths and how their own strengths can provide to the community. Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Let's give everybody a round of applause. So this is the opportunity for you to ask some questions of our panelists. Do we have somebody who'd care to lead off?
Hello. Thank you all. That was great, and it was really wonderful to hear about the work each of you are doing. And I guess a question that occurred to me while you were talking is, and this kind of ties into a question that came up in the last panel, how have universities changed, right? And how are they changing? And one thing that I know I was talking to Rhonda about that we didn't get to speak to is that, what counts as knowledge has changed in some significant ways, right? Compared to, when Socrates and Plato were doing their thing. And so, that's been an incredible change, and one that we're seeing so much of now, right? At FN traditional knowledge is really valued, right? And we absolutely look to the nonprofit sector in some significant ways, right, to provide knowledge for in the classroom, and as guest speakers in terms of our research. But so I wanted to ask you guys, where do you go when in terms of information gathering? Where are those key resources for you? And is it the university or is it not? And is it not? Where are you finding the greatest information, valued information in terms of the work you do? And where could the university maybe fill that gap? How could the university fill that gap, rather? So.
Thank you. So, Yvonne, you want to start off?
I think you're right. Knowledge has changed because problems have changed, right? And no longer can we solve them within one academic discipline. So I think it's multidisciplinary, it's interdisciplinary. Within the university, we have to work across disciplines. And seeking out those relationships internally is really important, what that knowledge is, and bringing people together, because you might not know, right? As David alluded to, we're dealing with some wicked problems where we might not even know what that problem is. So the key resources, I think, are within the university, and having forums like this just to bring people together to identify who's interested, who's working on what, and to try to create I guess, a database around that, and to interact with those individuals on a regular basis. And I think that was really the kind of the impetus of today. But where do we go? I mean, we've heard about knowledge and praxis, or we've heard about praxis. Scholarly journals are obviously important. Practice journals are important. There's so much knowledge that we have to have access to, and I think this has kind of overwhelmed our lives, that we have to not only keep abreast of traditional scholar, and the nature of scholarship has changed. It's no longer just peer-reviewed publications, it's new courses, it's online tools, it's service to society, it's software and patents and intellectual property. And our world, our heads are spinning around all of this stuff, and which discipline values what part of that scholarship, right? I don't even think, because it's so emerging so quickly, that we really need as a university to get a handle on that. And because I think it's particularly adding to our workloads, and then our ability to really connect to community, to really engage, especially for those of us who this is our core competencies.
I came to the work that I do from the academic world, and so my natural first instinct when I don't understand something is to look on JSTOR, but it doesn't always serve me that well. And I think what I've learned in the past couple of years is that I don't necessarily know what I don't know, and that when I'm in a situation like that, it's having colleagues and people who can sort of point me in the right direction that is the most useful tool for me.
the more we start to dig in and look with community or look at the community, work with the community, the more that we don't know. And I think that becomes really evident for our students, particularly in my organization, when they'll come to the clinic, they'll start to volunteer. We know they come with great skill sets, and then they engage and they're like, wow, I don't know anything. And so that is a challenge. And then so how do we build that, and how do we put that theory that they know, because they have that skill set, they have that knowledge base, how do we put that into practice? And so a lot of times it does come down to that the knowledge that they're gaining from the university. I know for myself, when I'm looking for that information, we've been really successful in partnering with different classes. So from an organizational capacity perspective, we have right now, one of the things Search is doing is working with Yvonne's Nonprofit and Innovation Leadership Certificate 200 course in developing a lot of kind of better practices for Search. So the students are digging into the organization, learning about the organization, and then coming back and presenting to us so that we can take that and run with it. And so that's very cost effective and very innovative. And it's been really beneficial to us in the past. We've done it with other courses as well. And then sometimes there's almost too much information at times. Like, I know there's so much coming through my inbox and I'm just trying to take it all in, and there's a toolkit here and a toolkit there, and I'm scanning. Okay, great. File it away in my brain, next. And I'm working on a project right now that's doing community-based research, and we're trying to develop a toolkit, and I'm so scared that that's going to happen to that, and I'm trying to balance that out. So I don't know, it's a tricky thing to balance and figure out as we go, because we need that information, we need access to it, but then there's a lot out there, and how do we narrow it down is still a challenge, but I think maybe it's through those partnerships that we can leverage it a little bit.
So part of my job is I call it a relationship manager. So I'm coming at this from strictly a non-faculty point of view and simply nonprofit. And we have looked to the different universities and colleges within Saskatchewan for some resources, but we really have to diversify just because we're in a position where you have to know people in different areas. But right now I'm learning so much, which is fantastic, knowing what type of programs you guys have. And now I can say confidently that I will reach out and it will be a point of contact. But have we always looked to the university? No, and sometimes it's been difficult, right? Because you guys have a lot going on and a lot of different research going on where we need a quick answer, or we need to know, can we get funding? How much community involvement can we get? And it's not always that easy. So my point of view is a little bit different than you guys because I'm not working here, but I'm happy to say that now I'll have more confidence approaching the universities. So.
Just to share my perspective from a student's point of view is when we start a new project or an initiative in Enactus, it usually is it begins with a thorough needs assessment. And with that thorough needs assessment, we can identify the type of information we need and the type of data that's going to help us. And I think what's helped us the most has been partnering with other organizations who've already done the work in the past. And that really gives us a good base to build off of. And we can use their framework and the data they've collected and just build off of it. And yeah, I don't know if John wants to add anything to that.
I'll just give an example. I think very recently we started, our newest project is it's a micro business incubator. It's just started up about a month ago. And one of our major partners is United Way, and we used a lot of their data that they had on kind of micro businesses in the city and kind of families who might need that second income, and that was a big driving factor in how we structured the opening of that project. Yeah.
Thank you. That's very useful. Do we have another question? You do realize our panel is now waiting for the Socratic question to be offered, but, and we appreciate it.
I want to share something. We've been talking in generalities, but I want to talk very specific. And I want to identify St. John's Ambulance. We had a problem. I'm from Waskimo, which is a private non-profit organization. And I'm nonprofit because I haven't made any money out of it, But I just want to tell you, I've been working on this Waskimo project for like 18 hours a day. This is volunteer, no money. But I can tell you one thing, the excitement you get in achieving or trying to reach your objective, which is very high, is the greatest excitement that I can think. So I just wanted to share that. And thank you, St. John's. It has made a big difference. All we did was one call and they were there. And one of the ladies there, I forget her name, she has been a volunteer there for 30 years, 35 years.
Well, we have Rose, who just celebrated her 55th year.
Oh my gosh.
There you go. And you can't imagine the excitement of this lady, as a volunteer. And I can't, no amount of money, no amount of anything could replace that. She brought the expertise, she made it happen, and we had no problem.
That's excellent. That's excellent. 55 years, my gosh. Do we have another question? We got a couple in the back here now. Thank you.
Yes, so I was looking at your Enactus brochure, and you talked about your vision, and you included the 17 UN Sustainable Development Goals, which are to guide the global development agenda until 2030. And apparently the governments of the world have committed billions of dollars, supposedly on paper, to go towards these goals. And it's the nonprofit sector that, in many ways, is the sector that can meet the environmental goals, the social goals, and so on. So I guess I'm interested in Enactus in particular. Why did you bring in the UN Sustainable Development Goals? Was there some strategic reason why that's your framing vision? And then maybe with the other voluntary sector organizations that are often after money, here you've got the governments of the world committing to lots of money for the Sustainable Development Goals. Are you positioning yourselves around those goals?
That's great question. And actually, that wasn't our decision as Enactus Regina to take on the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. It's Enactus as a global organization took that on a couple of years ago, the nice thing about the Sustainable Development Goals is when you're applying for the funding or when you're applying for in Enactus, we have project accelerators. Using and hitting on the Sustainable Development Goals are fantastic. Right? If you're and they love to see those and people in that context and in the not-for-profit context, as you mentioned, a lot of people who are furthering those goals, people get that. And then what we find is when we go to present to other students, or it's not as glamorous. It's something that not a lot of students will identify with right away. So it's definitely been an amazing tool in terms of speaking with government organizations, speaking with those organizations that have that CSR awareness and can kind of understand what the global movements are in creating social change. So I think that's part of, to answer your question as to why Enactus moved that in a way, more or less justifying kind of that change. When we approach our projects, that's of course we look to find the local community need, but also how it can answer to those United Nations kind of those global needs that are also coming through. That's kind of our perspective when we approach projects. Yeah, I think that answers. Does that answer your question? Okay, thank you.
Abbas, did you have anything you wanted to add?
Maybe if you wanted to know the amount of UN SDGs we're hitting right now, I believe it's over at least 13 out of 17, I think. So, yeah, from our many different projects that we do.
Thank you. Sara, did you have a comment?
I don't think I do. I think I'd like to hear from Marcia.
Or are you, I think the question was, were you working towards any of those goals in your own agencies? Yeah. Sustainable development.
Actually, I can't answer that right now. Yeah.
I can't say I can speak to it directly right now. I'd want to dig into it a little bit deeper. But when you posed your question, one of the questions I immediately had was, should the nonprofit sector immediately change? Or should the programs and services change to follow the money? My gut reaction is no, but I think, and maybe we need to put it back on to say the money needs to come to where the work is being done in those areas, and that's going to spur that innovation, maybe. I think that's where we look in a lot of different sectors, how we want things to change and evolve in that way. It's particularly in like private or business. And so maybe that's how we go about it. Like that's where we can draw and learn from pieces. Yeah, I don't know.
I just came back from Arizona at a big conference where the United Nations Development Program were there and talking about not in the community, but how do they prepare their own workforce to actually have the leadership knowledge and skills to achieve those goals. And so the last 3 years, they've been spending time looking at and developing a leadership framework, creating a curriculum, and trying to access the latest knowledge and resources so that they can make a difference. And now as they develop their workforce, they're going to move into how do they work with local communities? How do they train their workforce to empower those local communities rather than to do it for them? And so that's the next stage in their development, but they're very serious about it. And it was really inspiring to meet them and now to try to link up with them and our organization to see how we might be able to help with boots on the ground.
Thank you.
I have one other thing to add to that actually, and one of the most common things, sustainable development goals that Enactus teams often meet is the 17th one, which is partnerships for the goals. And I think that's a lot of what we are working at here today. And I think that's really exciting, whether it's specifically meeting other United Nations development goals or doing the work that we are in our community and the work that all the volunteers and everyone kind of here administering works at. Yeah.
Excellent point. Let's please join me in thanking our panelists for an excellent panel. I will now relinquish the microphone to Dean Griefenhagen, who will take us to the next step of the afternoon.